It's a real pleasure and an honor to speak to on behalf of your super at this summit, but also to this international crowd. One of the things that I was always very impressed by when Michael and Crystal and I first met was the sort of the global nature of that global outlook that they both had, and also the seriousness of purpose of communicating the message that the food that we eat can actually make a substantial impact on our health. And they have a very authentic story that I think everyone probably knows about. But to me, I'm very impressed always when somebody who has been able to attest to the value and the benefits of food actually tries to communicate their own benefit to their community, and then even more to the rest of the world. So I wanted to talk about food as medicine, in part because I'm a physician. I'm a medical doctor in internal medicine, which means that I'm trained to treat men and women, young and old, healthy and sick. And my philosophy as a medical doctor, an MD, has always been to try to keep people healthy. But where they're unable to be healthy, what I try to do is I try to restore their health. So rather than just prescribe medicines to chase a disease, and there's always more medicines to be able to prescribe, my philosophy has always been trying to get people back to health. And so if you think about health as a circular process rather than a linear process where you start healthy, inevitably you get sicker and sicker, and then you die. If you think about it as a circle where we're all born healthy, hopefully, and then as we go through the journey of life, we will have our own battles with coming off the tracks, the rails of being healthy. The goal is to get back on the rails and then make your way back to the top of the hour. That to me is really what the goal should be. And fortunately, science allows us to do that, because my background as a research scientist is that I've been involved with a field called angiogenesis. Angiogenesis, as Crystal pronounced perfectly, is how the body grows blood vessels. And it is a common denominator of health. We've got 60,000 miles worth of blood vessels packed inside our bodies. And this network of tubes actually delivers not just blood, but it delivers the oxygen that we breathe, and it delivers the nutrients that we eat to every single cell in our body, and therefore every single organ. So our blood vessels deliver to, our little toe, as well as to our brain. And when our blood vessels are healthy, we are healthy. And that's really what I started my work in, is understanding how angiogenesis is one of the body's critical health defense systems. I'm going to talk about that as well as some of the other body's health defenses today. The thing that I've done in food as medicine is, because I've worked in the angiogenesis field, to develop new treatments for cancer that have been FDA approved, and new treatments for complications of diabetes, which have been FDA approved, and new treatments for vision loss from being elderly, like macular degeneration, or complications of diabetes, and those have been FDA approved. I have a lot of experience with understanding how to translate science through the rigor it takes to develop the evidence, and then all the way to the situation where we're actually able to get the benefits to the people. Now, that's actually really, really important, because if you actually just have if you actually just have science that is nice to talk about, but you actually don't really have the benefits to the people, it kind of feels like you're just talking, or you're leaving something on the shelf as opposed to bringing it to the kitchen in this case. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the whole process of how food as medicine is being studied. What are we learning about it? And what the work I've actually done to be able to demonstrate that, in fact, fresh, healthy foods can do a lot more than what pharmaceuticals can actually do, because we only want to prescribe pharmaceuticals when it's too late to prevent a disease, and you actually need true medical care. So I'm a medical doctor. I believe in good medical care, but we shouldn't be relying only on prescription drugs and hospitals and systems. And here's what I'll tell you. In the last 2.5 years during the pandemic, that's been underscored more clearly than any other time, right? Pandemic hits, we all go into our houses. We're not really sure what's going on. The medical community at the time, and even today, have little to offer. You don't want to go to the hospital. You don't want to go to the doctor. Frankly, the doctor isn't really sure what to do for you. So this is the perfect example of how we have to actually rely on our own knowledge, our own awareness, and our own bodies, listening to our own bodies to make those healthy decisions of what we actually can do to protect our health. So I'm not going to talk anymore about the pandemic, but I will actually talk about some of the lessons that actually are relevant to wherever you live in the world. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about food as medicine. I'm going to show a few slides, and I'm going to share my screen. I think you can see my screen now.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so food as medicine really refers to this idea that the foods that we eat actually interact, our body responds to it, the foods that we eat, because Mother Nature has placed into whole natural foods many natural chemicals, and these natural chemicals have all kinds of functions for the food, for the plant itself. So did you know that many of these polyphenols, which can give a food color or give the food a flavor or taste or an odor, they actually are part of the health defense system for the plant. What do they do for the plant? Well, they help the plant defend itself against pests. So many of the natural bioactives in our plant-based foods actually are natural pesticides. Insects don't like them, and so the plant makes a lot of them. The other thing that many of these bioactives do is they protect the plant by ensuring reproductive robustness, meaning that they actually help to draw in pollinators, bees, flies, other things that flying insects will actually carry the seeds or carry the genetics of this plant to other locations so they can survive generations down the line. So the natural bioactives in our food actually protect the plant, both from pests as well as protect their evolution, their survival over generations in wherever region the plant is actually located. Now, what happens when humans actually picked up the first plant and started eating them? Well, those natural bioactives then had a new job description, and that job description is that these same bioactives that work to defend the plant actually now start interacting with our body to help our body's health defenses. So when we talk about food and health, it's not just about the food. It's about how our body responds to what we put inside it. Now, some of these responses are really important to understand, because when we talk about food as medicine, I mean, many people just basically go out and talk about the fact that, go out to the market and buy fresh food. I mean, this is actually a stand from a market that I've gone to in the south of France many, many times. Amazing, fresh food that you got the growers that are bringing it in. They know they're exactly how everything's grown. You can have a conversation about them. And of course, we know that beans are healthy. We know that onions are healthy. We know that kale is healthy, and carrots and leeks and so on and so forth. But how? The how question is what science brings to the table. Because of course, if you eat a good, healthy garden salad, it's going to be healthier than eating a hot dog, for example, or a bratwurst, depending on where you're from. But the question is how, because once we understand how, it gives us more of a reason to act, because then we're really becoming more informed on what we should be doing for ourselves. Now, I want to talk about, before I talk about all the different foods, I want to talk about our body's health defenses. So, when I was in medical school, I was taught how to define diseases. What is cancer? What is tuberculosis? What is diabetes? What is lupus? What is arthritis? I could come up, I can tell you very quickly, I can define all those diseases that, you look them up in a textbook and you can study them. But when I was asked, what is health, while I was training to be a doctor, I always scratched my head because I was never satisfied with the answer that I gave. I basically said, well, I'm healthy if I don't have disease. And that's defining health as the absence of disease, which is not very satisfactory, because you can't do anything to support something that's the absence of something else, right? That's a null definition. And so I spent a lot of time, years, really researching this to try to understand what is health. Well, it turns out health is not just the absence of disease. Health is actually the result of our body's hardwired health defense systems firing on all cylinders. I'm going to tell you what these health defense systems are in just a few moments. But our health defenses are like the defenses of a fortress that you might actually see. Sometimes I show a picture of the Disney castle because most people have gone to it, but I know people are from all around the world here. So I'm showing you that quintessential European castle. When you look at a castle like this, there's a community that this was built for to intend to keep them safe. So what's inside a castle, right? Let's take a look. You've got all the designers of the castle built all these different clever components in the structure of the castle. They have the moat, right, to prevent invaders from getting in. They've got a hole near the entrance that you could drop rocks down. They were called the murder hole. Most people don't know that. They've got a bent entrance, so you can't get in that quickly. They've got a spiral staircase. You know how the spiral staircase is done in a European castle? It is actually always clockwise, okay? It's clockwise because most people who are defending soldiers, who are knights that are defending the castle are right-handed. And think about it. If you're trying to defend something, a spiral staircase, and you're right-handed, you can strike down with the right hand. If the enemy has to go clockwise going uphill and they're right-handed, they can't fight very well. They got to swing all the way from the other side. So it gives the defender the advantage. There is something called a trou de loup. That's basically like a tiger pit. It's a hole with the stake in the ground. You've got these arrow slits. You can shoot out arrows, and you've got the talus. So this is that gently sloped wall in the castle. It makes it really hard to climb up. Although I think a skilled mountain climber, rock climber, could actually do it today. Anyway, I want to show you this because this is actually what the equivalent of what we have inside our bodies that foods actually activate. So let me reveal to you what our body's health defense systems are. We've got 5 of them. Angiogenesis, our circulation, that 60,000 mile channel protects our body in absolutely critical ways. We've got stem cells, part of our regenerative system that is also one of our health defense systems. When we were in grade school, we were taught that salamanders and starfish can regenerate and people can't. That whole textbook is being thrown out the window because we now know that humans do regenerate slowly from the inside out throughout our lives. So when we were formed in our mom's womb, sperm meets egg, cells a few days later start to form stem cells, formed by stem cells. Those stem cells became our face, our nose, our ears, our lungs, our liver, our big toe. That's how our body forms over 9 months. And when we're born, we've got excess stem cells that weren't used. On average, we all have 750 million extra stem cells. That's the overage. So what happens? Before we're born, all those extra stem cells are packed into our bone marrow. All right, like extra stuff. You pack it into a suitcase, or here's what I say is like if you're painting a house, you always buy more paint than you need. And then when you're done painting the house, you've got all these extra cans of paint. What do? You put the lid on, you put it in the garage. Well, that's actually what our body does. Puts the stem cells, those extra stem cells, into our bone marrow to store so that when we need them, we've got 750 million extra stem cells to help regenerate our organs. So we know our organs regenerate. Our liver regenerates, our lungs regenerate, our hair regenerates, otherwise we wouldn't have hair. Our skin regenerates, our gut regenerates. Have you ever had something really sharp to eat, like a stiff chip of some sort or snack, and you scrape the roof of your mouth, and man, does that hurt, right? You feel that skin falling off. And so, it might set you back for a day, go to sleep, you wake up the next day, guess what? That whole area has been healed up, regenerated. You regenerate the lining of your gastrointestinal tract. So that's actually how we know regeneration is a defense system. Our microbiome, so much has been talked about gut health. And our microbiome, this 39 trillion bacteria in our gut, are another part of our health defense systems. They control our metabolism. They control our inflammation, lower inflammation. They actually even help our bodies heal to speed up wound healing. They make our hair shiny, our skin glow. They even send text messages to our brain. Imagine a bacteria texting our brain in order to send signals to it to release social hormones like oxytocin, a very, very important hormone. So our microbiome is really important. When we feed our microbiome good things, it's healthy and it pays us back by controlling all those healthy functions. When we feed our body something that's not healthy for our microbiome is unable to perform those functions, and then our blood sugars go haywire, our blood cholesterol, our lipids go haywire, our emotions, our social mindset goes haywire as well. Very important to feed our microbiome the right way. Then we've got our DNA, much more than a genetic code. Our DNA protects us from the environment. So you know how mutations lead to cancer. You know how exposures to nasty chemicals or smoking can cause the mutations that then lead to the development of cancer. Well, let me just tell you that you don't even need to smoke a cigarette to have damage. What about ultraviolet radiation from the sun? Even if you don't go to the beach, even if you don't go to the tanning solution, if you're stuck in traffic on a sunny day, you are having the ultraviolet radiation beam in through the window to your face. How come you don't develop skin cancer from sitting in traffic in your car? Because the DNA protects itself. It neutralizes and fixes any DNA damage so you don't have those mutations. What about when you're at the gas station? I always ask people, do you stand upwind or downwind of the gas pump? And people look at me and say, I don't know. Why do you ask? And what I say is that if you can smell the fumes of the gasoline, the petrol, then you are standing downwind, and those fumes, those solvents are going into your lung, and it's causing mutations. So how come you don't develop lung cancer after you fill up your car with gas? Because the DNA is protecting itself. So, and what about radon, which comes naturally from the earth? Did you know that we actually have radiation that comes up from the soil through the basement into our bodies when we were on the ground floor? Well, again, our body's hardwired to protect itself, fix the DNA. And this DNA, by the way, slows down cellular aging. That's a fringe benefit of that. And finally, over the last couple of years, every single person on the planet has come to respect the immune system in a brand new way. We want good immunity. We want to build immunity. We don't want to have lower immunity. And so that's actually something that we know that our diet and lifestyle plays a very, very important role on in terms of the foods that we eat. And these 5 systems, angiogenesis, stem cells, microbiome, our DNA protection system, and our immunity are the breadbasket of research against which we study foods. What foods do we eat that can actually benefit, activate, support these kind of systems? Now, by the way, before I talk about what those foods are, let me just say that food as medicine is something that you've actually heard that the father of Western medicine, Hippocrates, may have said. It's an attribution. Hippocrates, it hasn't been traced that Hippocrates actually said that, but it's attributed to the time that he lived in. And because back then there were no medicines. So people who were going about thinking about their health and the doctors helping patients then, they recognized and acknowledged that the foods that we eat either build up or take down our health, and that what we eat when we're sick can make actually a difference as well. So that's why food as medicine is really, at one point, that's all there was. Food was medicine. The other thing I want to tell you about food is that food's very intimate. One of the most intimate things that we know, because from the time we were born, that very first day, we started to actually eat foods, and our family made decisions to eat foods. Everyone has food that they recognize from the time they were a kid, that they say, man, when I smell that, it reminds me of my mom's cooking. Right? That's how intimate it is. We'll go our whole lives remembering those smells. And so that, therefore, there's a culture to it, whether you're from Germany or Switzerland or Italy, or whether you're from North Carolina or from Florida. All of us grew up in a household where people cooked food, and we associate with that. And that's why we all have our own preferences, and food preferences become really important because, a lot of times when people talk about healthy food, they think, well, I should only eat celery. So I guess, or celery is healthy, so I should only eat celery. And I guess I should eat a barrel full of celery every day, right? Wrong. We need to pay attention to our own preferences. Those are the things that allow us to behave in ways that can be sustainable. good, healthy food and eating and using food as medicine very much is a part of who we are as individuals. So you got to pay attention to that, that intimacy. The other thing is that about food is that it's turned out to be something pretty confusing. There's a lot of conflicting information that's out there that companies put out, that health pundits put out, that you see on podcasts, you hear about it. Is a tomato deadly nightshade, or is it healthy? All these confusions. Does soy cause breast cancer or not? All these things can be resolved with science, but many people actually aren't scientists, and so it's hard to understand what those are. And many people communicating these messages aren't scientists either. So I'm one of the people who is a doctor who understands the importance of medicine, but I also am researching food. I'm also a scientist. So part of what I'm going to try to do is share with you the science as well. So it's a little bit of a unusual double hat that I wear, but it's a privilege for me to be able to talk to you guys to tell you what I actually know. A lot of myths out there. I'll try to bust some of those myths as well. So, okay, so we talked about the 5 health defense systems. Now, I want to actually share with you what some of the information is. So let's talk about angiogenesis. Blood vessels, I mentioned to you the 60,000 miles worth. Most of you will not have seen blood vessels because you only get to see blood, right? You cut yourself and then you bleed. But I want to show you a picture that only a researcher can show you. This is the close-up view of what blood vessels look like in different organs. On the upper left-hand side is blood vessels in your liver. Look at what they look like. They look like rivers with tributaries, right? Well, what does the liver do? It detoxifies your blood. And so not surprisingly, the way those blood vessels are set up is to allow that purification process to go on. Look at the upper right-hand side. These are the blood vessels in a lung. What does the lung do? The lung exchanges oxygen that you breathe in and gets rid of carbon dioxide. So look at these blood vessels. They're pressed up against a bubble called the alveolus in your lung. And so when you're breathing in oxygen, when you take a big breath in, the oxygen diffuses into these big blood vessels. They're all wrapped around a bubble. Now look at the lower right-hand side, nerves. Our nerves are fed by blood vessels as well. In fact, nerves require blood vessels to keep the signal alive, so blood vessels course along the nerves like telephone lines. Those old-fashioned telephone lines or cable keeps them alive. You need good, healthy blood vessels for your nerves to function. And then on the lower left-hand side is the heart. Now the heart is beating all the time. And so the blood vessels have to be thick and dense so the heart can always get its own oxygen. This is a view that mostly scientists see. I wanted to share it with you guys so you understand what we're talking about when we talk about the health defense properties of angiogenesis. Now, those are healthy blood vessels. I want to share with you what happens when our blood vessels become unhealthy. So cancer hijacks angiogenesis. So on the upper left-hand side in that pink layer, you can see a little gray tumor. Now we're all forming cancers in our bodies all the time, like little pimples. We've got 40 trillion human cells, they're dividing, they make a mistake, and bingo, you've got a little microscopic cancer. That microscopic cancer can grow to the size of the tip of a ballpoint pen, about 2 millimeters in diameter. Then it can't get any bigger. It doesn't have any oxygen, doesn't have any nutrients. It's stuck. Now, what actually happens is that it'll stay there, and our immune defenses will wing by and look for problems like that. When they see a tiny little gray speck that's a microscopic cancer, they'll say, hey, that's an enemy. Let's go wipe it out. So it's like a policeman or a cop on a beat doing surveillance, driving by with their car, seeing a hoodlum and just picking them right off the street and taking them to jail, okay? So that's basically what normally happens in all of our bodies. So everyone watching this right here, right now, you've got cancer in your body, I've got cancer in my body, and it is harmless. So when does cancer become harmful? Well, when tumors, those microscopic cancers, gain the genetic ability to release fertilizers. Look at the third gray spot in the pink. It's releasing these green bubbles, okay? That is fertilizer that the tumor is releasing to hijack blood vessels. So the cancer is getting into the cockpit and telling blood vessels to grow right towards it. Once those blood vessels actually touch the tumor, they're bringing oxygen and nutrients. The tumor can start to expand because it's being fed. It now can breathe. Now is fed. And the same blood vessels that feed the cancer also allow cancer cells to exit and escape into the system to as metastases. Now, and by the way, for people who have cancer, it's not the primary cancer that usually is deadly. You can usually do surgery and take that out. It's the metastasis, the cancer cells that go everywhere, that grow in your brain and your bones and everywhere else, that kills you. Now, what I worked on for a big part of my career is developing ways to cut off the blood supply to cancer. So there's a lot of drugs that can actually do this. So an oncologist, a cancer doctor, can prescribe infusions and pills that can actually cut off the blood supply to cancer, but foods can actually do it as well. So that's actually what's an amazing thing to think about what we're able to do. So cutting off the blood supply to cancer is something we can actually do using different types of foods. So starving cancer, so we can feed ourselves, but starve the cancer at the same time. Now, I want to share with you what how the researcher thinks about food as medicine. This is an actual bona fide food as medicine research project that I actually did. Remember, I showed you the blood vessels feeding that cancer. So think about that black bar, that graph, that bar on the top that you're seeing as blood vessels that would be feeding a cancer. All right. Now, on the vertical axis, I'm going to show you different lengths of blood vessels that are feeding a cancer when you treat the system with different foods. And then the magnitude of the effect, meaning what you're seeing at the top is a 100% cancer-feeding blood vessel. Okay, that's as long as it's going to get. It's touching the cancer, feeding the cancer. So now let's take a look at what happens when you add medicines, cancer drugs, and some other common drugs will actually knock down the black bar, so it'll be shorter. So Captopril is a blood pressure medicine, lenalidomide is a cancer medicine, pravastatin is a statin for cholesterol, knocks down the blood vessels. I mean, what you want to do is compare it to the black bar, okay? Shorter is starving the cancer by cutting off the blood supply. Doxycycline is a antibiotic. Tamoxifen, of course, is a cancer drug that does actually target blood vessels. The celecoxib, diclofenac, those are anti-inflammatories. Irinotecan is a cancer drug as well. Okay, so this is what I have done as a cancer researcher, and we'd stop there if all we were interested in is pharmaceuticals. But look at the title of this: Farm versus Pharma. Okay, so what happens when you throw food into the same experiment? This is food as medicine, and this is the kind of work that I actually do. So let's go ahead and throw some food in there. Check it out. Pretty amazing. Turmeric, green tea, lavender, brassica, which is broccoli, Brussels sprouts, and kale, red grapes, garlic, soybeans, berries, parsley, artichoke, soy extract. You can see that in many cases, the food substance goes head to head against a drug, and in some cases beats the drug at its own game. This is really where food as medicine is actually going. And it really opens our eyes to not just the potential for food, but the actual activity of food as well. And that's something that I've actually spoken with Michael and Crystal about in terms of your super and looking through the different types of ingredients and foods they're choosing and helping them understand what some of the beneficial aspects are. And this is really, stuff that's smoking hot out of the lab that I'm actually involved with to be able to take a look at it. Now, here's a whole list of foods, partial list of foods with anti-angiogenic cancer-starving activity. Look at that. Look at how broad this list is. They're all mostly plant-based foods. There's some seafood in there, but by the way, the seafood's omega-3 fatty acids, that's anti-angiogenic, cancer starving, and the omega-3s actually come from plants as well. So pick a food that you enjoy eating here, and know that that if you like it, you should eat it, because you are already ahead of the game in terms of doing something to boost your body's angiogenesis health defenses. That's really quite amazing. Now, there's all these other health defenses as well. I don't have time today in this keynote to go through every single one of them, but I could, and it's something that's worthwhile talking about. I I give a masterclass. My next one is actually going to be coming this Monday. If you come to my website, you can sign up for it. It's free. And I'll talk through all these different health defenses and the different foods as well. For today, what I want to do is really just kind of give you the bigger picture, really from a Keynote perspective, that we understand that foods benefit our bodies by activating the health defense systems. By the way, if you eat a food that damages your health defense systems, that's also not good, because that actually makes us more vulnerable to disease. And it makes perfect sense. So what are some of those foods? Foods with a lot of added sugar or artificial sweeteners, or red meat, high amounts of red meat, or processed meats, which is a class 1 carcinogen by the World Health Organization, or ultra processed foods that contain, tons and tons and tons of artificial preservatives and chemicals and artificial flavorings and colorings. Those things actually damage our angiogenesis, stem cell, microbiome, DNA protection, and immune systems. That's why we don't want to be eating too much of those. We want to cut those down, and we want to be eating some of those foods that I showed you earlier that support the angiogenesis and other systems as well. So I wrote a book called Eat to Beat Disease. It became a New York Times bestseller. If you want to look at 200 drugs, a table full of 200 different drugs, it's in my book. And you can actually take a pencil out and start circling the foods that you already love to figure out exactly how you start ahead of the game, choosing foods. And many of these foods, by the way, are also found in the repertoire, the portfolio of the Your Super catalog. So let's go ahead and talk about some of these foods, so I can just put some rubber on the road to say, like, well, so that's nice. You show me some pictures of foods. Of the health defense system. Show me something that I can do something about. So that's what I'm going to wind up with, is telling you what you can do about. All right, it's winter, pomegranate season. Pomegranates actually got this great juice, the seeds you can put into a salad. There's pomegranate supplements as well. Now, what's in pomegranate? Well, there's elagitannins that are found in pomegranate that actually gives it that tart flavor and red color as well. And it turns out that those elagitannins actually cause our gut to secrete more mucus, healthy mucus, and that allows good, healthy gut bacteria to grow. There's one bacteria called Akkermansia muciniphila, because this Akkermansia bacteria loves to grow in mucus. That's why its last name is muciniphila. And so when we eat pomegranates or drink pomegranate juice, genuine pomegranate juice, not the stuff that's actually manufactured with a little drop of pomegranate flavor and a ton of added sugar, but made from real pomegranates, it turns out that you actually create more mucus, you create more healthy gut bacteria. That gut bacteria helps your lipids, helps your blood vessels, helps your immune system, all those good stuff. And it's been studied in cancer patients that this can be beneficial. Now, a kiwi, I actually love kiwis. Kiwi is a great source of vitamin C, which is anti-inflammatory. It's a great source of fiber. And if you're going to put a kiwi in a blender, for example, you can grind up everything, including the skin, which is where a lot of the fiber is. It turns out that kiwi can actually protect our DNA by about 60%. So people who eat just 1 or 2 kiwis a day, if you withdraw their blood and expose their blood to harmful oxidative stress, and it damages the DNA, the kiwi will actually protect the DNA by 60%. It's like Captain America's shield. It knocks out 50% of the harmful stuff, which, by the way, a kiwi is something so easy to eat at breakfast every single day. Tomato, big urban legend that tomatoes are harmful. The tomatoes are not harmful. They're healthful. They're healthy and healthful. And tomatoes have something called lycopene. It's a healthy bioactive. All the human studies have been done in 30,000 people, showing that eating 2 to 3 servings of cooked tomatoes every week lowers the risk of prostate cancer by 29%. Okay, that's rubber meets the road. That's the human data. And so even though people talk about, well, tomatoes are bad because they're nightshades, and they're related to nightshade plant family. They've got lectins, look, some of that might be true. I mean, I will tell you that tomatoes have lots of lectins. Unfortunately, and I study lectins, I can tell you, or fortunately, none of the lectins in a tomato is harmful. They're all harmless They're all harmless lectins. So don't listen to that stuff. I'm a scientist telling you I study lectins. And then they say it's related to nightshade. Well, a lot of foods are related to a lot of things. It doesn't mean that they're poisonous. You wouldn't want to eat a nightshade, but you do want to eat a tomato if you care about your prostate. Also lowers the rate of breast cancer by about 25%. So if you care about, your ultimate fate, take a look at the human data, not the theory, not the marketing, not the podcast or the YouTube video. Look at the science, what the science actually says. All right. So I just busted a myth for you. There's eating tomatoes, cooked tomatoes, lowers the risk of prostate cancer by 29% if you have 2 to 3 servings a week, each serving being about a half cup in size. Here's edamame, soybeans. Women should stay away from it, right? Wrong. The urban legend is that soy is dangerous because it contains a phytoestrogen that could trigger breast cancer. Well, look, I'm a doctor and also a scientist, and it is true that some human breast cancers are triggered by estrogen. But here's the scientist in me telling you what the actual facts are. Turns out that there's a plant estrogen, phytoestrogen, that looks nothing like the human estrogen. In fact, the plant estrogen blocks the human estrogen. It's like Mother Nature's tamoxifen. So not only is it harmless, it's beneficial. And in fact, this has been studied in 5,000 women who already have breast cancer. Turns out that those women who eat more soy have lower mortality, and they are able to live longer. So these are the highest women at risk. Totally not true. In Asia, they don't tell you if you've got breast cancer to stop all eating soy. In fact, they tell you to eat more. So that's another myth busted that you should know about. Now, what's this? Some of you guys might recognize this instantly. Some of you might not. But this is a cacao pot, plant-based food that is the source for making chocolate. All right. So cacao, if you were to take this and it's ripe, you cut it in half. I had one in my house the other day. You cut it in half. You open it up. There's lots of these biggish seeds in them. I would say each seed is about the size of a small chestnut, and the seed is covered with this white flesh. The flesh is kind of sweet and sour. It's a little bit like a lychee. You can actually pop them out, and you can actually kind of strip off the flesh. It's like actually it's quite good. And then the seed is actually dried and fermented, and ultimately that winds up becoming cacao. So dark chocolate cacao contains proanthocyanidin. This is a bioactive that's been studied in people with heart disease. And it's been shown that people who have bad blood flow with heart disease, if they have dark hot cocoa, dark chocolate, high flavanol, hot cocoa, and they have just 2 cups of this a day over the course of 30 days. If you measure their stem cells in their bloodstream at time 0, day 0, and then compare it to 30 days of drinking 2 cups of hot chocolate a day, so 60 cups of hot chocolate, that you'll actually find that some of them have had double the number of stem cells coming out of their bone marrow into the bloodstream. Remember, I told you about regeneration, and their blood flow is actually better as well. So plant-based food as hot cocoa, dark chocolate, so you need like 80% or higher. It's pretty serious dark chocolate, actually can mobilize your stem cells, studied in the humans. So I'm just trying to tell you human studies. I'm not quoting any mice studies. I'm not talking about stuff in a test tube. This is actually what's actually happening in the lab. Let's go through a few more. Coffee. I have coffee every single day. Coffee contains something called chlorogenic acid. Organic coffee has more of it because the chlorogenic acid is a pesticide. So when you actually have a natural pesticide, so when insects nibble on the leaves and stems of a coffee plant, the response, the self-defense that the coffee plant has is to make more chlorogenic acid. And so then when you take the beans from the organic coffee plant and you actually make coffee out of it, it's got more chlorogenic acid. So studies in humans have shown that drinking 1 to 3 cups of coffee a day has enough chlorogenic acid. It lowers the risk of heart failure by about 33%. That's pretty substantial. Now, people used to think that coffee actually would cause heart disease because the caffeine would cause your heart to race, give you a heart attack. So again, urban legend, smashed it. That's one of the things that food is medicine science allows you to do. Now, green tea, that when I'm showing you powder from matcha and a glass of green tea, that has a polyphenol called EGCG, all right? It's a catechin. Studies in humans have shown that 2 cups a day of tea can lower the risk of developing ovarian cancer by 50%. Okay, by 50%. That's a huge amount. There's no drug that can actually do that, but just drinking green tea can actually is associated with that in human studies. And that pile of green powder, matcha, so that's not brewed tea. Matcha is the entire tea leaf grown in a shade and then ground into a powder. Now, this has been studied in the lab. Okay, so we know green tea is good no matter what, but now when you took it into the lab, guess what the green tea, the matcha powder does, which is the whole shebang, the entire leaf, all right? Matcha kills breast cancer stem cells. These are the baby cancer cells in the breast that make breast cancers keep on coming back. And there's no medicine, there's no pharmaceutical that can actually kill cancer stem cells. But there is a beverage that actually been shown by researchers to be able to do this. That's quite remarkable that we can do this. Let's keep going. 33% heart failure, 2 cups a day, 50% decrease in ovarian cancer. What about nuts? Showing you walnuts and macadamia nuts. And I'm not going to show you pistachios and pecans and pine nuts, those as well. But guess what? The tree nuts have fiber. They also have healthy plant-based omega-3 fatty acids. And studies have shown that eating 2 handfuls of nuts per week, okay, could reduce mortality from colon cancer, from people who are having colon cancer, getting chemotherapy. If they added 2 handfuls of nuts, it cut down their mortality by 57%. 57%. That's amazing. So you're getting treated, and usually cancer patients ask their doctor what they should be eating. The doctor say, eat whatever you want. Not me. I will tell you, look at the science, and here is actually a benefit of eating tree nuts. So how many tree nuts are we talking about here? Two handfuls. Well, I can tell you it's 7 walnuts, whole walnuts. So then you're actually each time you eat it. So take a walnut, it's 2 of them. So that's a handful. 11 macadamia nuts is the other handful, and that's actually gives you the dose that you would need. Now, hear about white beans. Now, I'm somebody who likes to cook. I love white beans. There's all these kinds of white beans that are out there: cannellini beans, tarbay beans, navy beans. Oh, and it's not just white beans. It could be black beans. It could be as well a number of different beans, even lentils. Well, studies have shown that eating a cup a day for 5 days a week can take an inch off the waistline of men and women. An inch off the waistline by having 1 cup of beans a day. You ever take a measuring cup out and see how much that a cup is? Not that much, all right? And it turns out that the fiber in the beans, along with the healthy omega-3 fatty acids, activate our gut microbiome in ways that change our metabolism and help our brown fat, which is the healthy fat, help beneficial fat, burn down the bad fat. And that can actually decrease visceral obesity and waistline, around the waistline as well. So pretty amazing. All right, spinach. Spinach contain nitrates. And beets do as well. Nitrate, it grows near the ground. It absorbs a lot of the natural nitrogen from the soil. And so you get a lot of nitrates in it. Well, nitrates are supposed to be bad, right? Well, no, nitrates are really good in spinach. Did you know that a serving of spinach has 23 times more nitrate than a hot dog does? All right. So this is actually, I'm going to tell you why it's beneficial, because if you actually eat spinach and you chew it and let the tongue microbiome, the healthy gut bacteria in your tongue, interact with the nitrogen from the spinach plant, it'll change it to a form when you swallow it turns into nitric oxide, which dilates your blood vessels, healthy for angiogenesis, and it calls out stem cells as well. So you can actually, for every serving of spinach, you can decrease your blood pressure by about 5 points in the systolic function, which decreases your risk. Every point that you decrease that top number of blood pressure lowers your risk of stroke by 5%. Okay, stroke is a major killer around the world. So that's quite amazing as well. What about button mushrooms? A cup and a third cooked increases the antibodies that we normally secrete in our saliva by 55%. And eating a single serving will keep our antibodies up to protect us from viruses and bacteria for about a week, which is really, really quite amazing. All right, apple a day. Is it an apple a day keeps the doctor away? Nope. 2 apples a day has been studied to show it decreases lung cancer by 18%. So what's the best apple to eat? Well, you actually want to have a Granny Smith apple, or for those of you in Europe, there's an apple called a Renette apple. It's a medium-sized European apple. I would actually get that. Purple foods like cabbage, radicchio, purple potatoes, been found to kill colon cancer stem cells. There's no drug that can do that, but these amazing foods can actually do it as well. And then guava, strawberry, red bell peppers, they are anti-inflammatory, lowers down the inflammation, and it can cut down lupus flares by 74%. In a study which looked at women who ate more vitamin C containing foods, they had less inflammation, fewer inflammatory markers as well. So where are we going with all this? We are going with eating foods that taste great. And then the technology that's coming out is ways that you can actually have a breathalyzer for the healthy food that you've eaten, or a ring that you're wearing that can sense what kinds of foods that you've eaten, or a tube you can spit into in order to be able to measure your health. And so these are the kinds of things that are coming out. And now taking the work even further, I'm giving you a little bit of a snapshot of peering underneath the curtains. We're looking at the flavorome. So this is actually how the chemicals that give our foods flavor interact to be able to actually help our health. So you've heard of the human genome, the transcriptome. So with food, it's flavorome that you need to be aware of. And so this whole idea of what I've taken is the experience I've had in really drug development and applying it to actually studying our food gives us the evidence, a scientific evidence of food as medicine. And one of the things that's wonderful that you can do is you can actually take these foods, you can turn them into powder, and then you can actually make them available in different forms and formats, which is something that your super is actually doing. So if you liked if you like what I said, and I've only been able to give you a full explanation. In my book, I've got tables of foods that all fit and activate these health defense systems. And my next master class is coming up this Monday. It's completely free. Register at my website, www.drwilliamlee.com. Come and register, and I will go much more in depth than I have been able today. And with that, I will come back to the group to say it's been a real pleasure to speak with you guys. I am happy to take some questions of what you guys are interested in. And, the name of your super is actually really true. There's no such thing as a superfood, but your body is super, and only you can create health for yourself. Thank you.
Wow. I don't even know what to say. There's so much information. The chat has been blowing up, a million questions. But again, like Dr. Lee said, he has a master class, so he can go deeper. On Monday, it's free, so be sure to do that. We put that information in the chat. And if you do have time, Dr. Lee, we'd love to ask a couple questions.
Sure.
Came up reoccurring in our chat. You talked a lot about coffee and matcha. People are asking about the caffeine, and if people are trying to avoid caffeine, is there an alternative? Do you have any advice on that?
Right. Okay. So first of all, some people are very sensitive to caffeine, and they should avoid foods like coffee and tea that are full test caffeine. If you get the decaffeinated kind, what you got to be careful about is that most decaf versions of coffee and tea, many of them actually have ether, which is a solvent passed through them to remove not only the caffeine, but it takes away the chlorogenic acid as well. So that's not what you want. Now, more recently, people have actually used water to remove caffeine. So there's water purification or water decaffeination. If you look for those, it doesn't take away quite as much chlorogenic acid, but it does take away most of the caffeine. So I would say if you want the benefits of coffee or tea, and you want to try to get the decaf, just be aware you want to get the water extracted version, water decaffeinated part, and that's where you want to look at the package, go on a website, check it out, make sure you understand how they remove that caffeine.
So interesting, and good to know. All right, another question. How can you be sure the foods you buy in the store are good quality and don't cause more damage than good?
Great question. It's a broad question, right? And so here's kind of the best way that I would say, I'll tell you how I do it, right? That's probably the most authentic thing I can tell you. I walk into a store, let's call it a grocery store, right? So whether it's in Europe or whether it's in the United States or whether it's in Asia, I don't know, but I haven't been to a Balinese grocery store, but I'm sure it's the same. I head straight to the produce section as my first place because the food there is always going to be healthier than almost any other place in the store. And I try to look what is fresh and in season. And you can go online and Google and you can actually find out what foods are in season, what fresh produce is in season at almost any given time. And then that's what I put on my shopping list. Now, then you dive a little bit deeper and say, well, of those foods, which ones are healthier, which of the produce are healthier for you? And that's where, like whether you go back and take a look at the book or whether my book, or whether you listen to this, you listen to a podcast or a webcast like this webinar, you actually can start making notes to yourself of the foods that are actually healthy that you like. I want to emphasize, you've got to put the foods on your to-do list that you already like. I always tell people, you go to my book, open it up, there's 200 foods. I tell you, take a Sharpie, all right, and circle all the foods among those 200 you like. I have never met anybody over the last 3 years who has not been able to pick out at least 10 foods that are healthy for you, that you activate your health defenses you already like. And then I say, congratulations, because you've already identified the foods you love that are good for you. Start and stick with those, okay? You're a winner. I mean, you already know you're a winner, right? Because some people go, I don't know what to eat. And then like they start looking around for healthy foods and they feel like a loser because they don't want to eat those foods. I'm telling you that you're already a winner. And then what I tell people to do is go back onto these lists and try one new food, at least one new food every week that you want to explore. How do you explore it? Take a food that you want to take a chance on. I've never had radicchio. I've never had squid. I've never had something. All right. Take it. Don't be afraid. You can order it online, or if you see it in the store. Sometimes I'll be in the store with an ingredient that I didn't recognize. I whip out my phone and I'm there in the store searching it out. That's where it comes from. Then what do? Like some of these tropical exotic fruits I'll sometimes see, like a dragon fruit or something like that. Then what I'll do is I'll if it's healthy, then I'll actually say, I'll type it up and I'll look for a video recipe. Now I'll actually stand there and I'll take the 2 minutes that somebody's talking to me about how to cook it in a way that's delicious. Sometimes that's what I use as a way of inspiring myself to go buy them. Like, well, I can do that. Boom, it goes into my cart. So that's how I actually choose foods. And I try to avoid foods that don't look healthy, foods that are really old and no longer have any what do you call it, like firmness. If you go to a vegetable place and it's limp, probably not that great. It's probably been sitting around for a long time. It hasn't been kept in the right conditions. And so that's how I choose that. Now, I will tell you, if you then go to the middle aisles, people tell you to go to the middle aisles. Here's another myth I want to bust. People say, oh, just shop the perimeter of the store and stay away from the middle aisles. I will say, definitely go to the perimeter store, go to the produce section first. I go to the middle aisle. All right. What I want you to do is to recognize there's a lot of junk in the middle aisle, a lot of stuff that's not good for you, but there's treasure too. You got your beans, you've got your fermented foods, you've got your seafoods and tins, you've got all kinds of goodies, you've got your coffees, you've got your teas, you've got your nuts, tree nuts that are all found in those middle aisles. Don't be afraid to go into the middle. What I want you to do is to wear a filter though, okay? Like put spectacles on that allow you to just kind of disregard all those junky stuff, that's out there, and go for the stuff that you want to go. And that's why making that shopping list is really smart, because then you walk into the middle aisle, you're not browsing. You are on a mission to find those healthy foods in the middle aisle.
I love that. If you don't have a YouTube channel, we need to do like a shopping with Dr. William Li video. That would be so interesting, just to see what you do. I know a lot of people have been asking what your daily routine is, what your daily food routine is. So I'm sure people would be interested. One question that came up, and this topic actually came up yesterday, is the soy, as you said, gets a pretty bad rap. And a lot of people have been told, especially women, to avoid soy. So the question is wondering how soy's health benefits can be reaped from soy milk, and how do I choose a good soy source versus anything that's processed? Is that worse for you? Kind of how do we navigate eating soy?
Okay. First of all, what I try to do is tell people soy is one of those foods that had an urban legend around it, kind of like the boogeyman. Doesn't exist. All right. Don't worry about it. Like, it's safe to check in your closet. There's nothing bad in there. And soy is a wonderful food because it gives protein. It's got healthy phytonutrients in it. It's actually a subsistence crop in Asia, and it's been that way for years. In Asia, many people are the diet's actually fundamentally vegetarian. Okay, and soy is one of the staples. So, what I think is really helpful for people to think about is soy is a plant. It's got soybeans. You might go to a Japanese restaurant and eat edamame. That's a great way to get it. You can get frozen edamame, by the way. Flash frozen foods, fruits and vegetables tend to be really good if they're flash frozen. All the phytonutrients are trapped in there. So you can get flash frozen edamame. You can put it in a steamer at home, steam them up, put a little salt on them, and you've kind of gone to your own sushi bar and ordered the edamame. So easy to make, so delicious. You can snack on those, frankly. Speaking of snacks, there are dried soy beans that are actually a common snack in Asia as well. And then, you take a look at some other common forms of soy milk, right? Now, that study I cited, 5,000 women with breast cancer who were studied for how much soy they ate. Those women who had 30% reduction in mortality, all right, they were having about 10 grams of soy protein a day. So how much is that? That's one fluid cup of soy milk. So to pick a soy milk, make sure it's not sweetened. It's got all kinds of other stuff in it that is artificial or ultra processed, but the pure soy milk is one way of actually doing it. Now, some people can make soy milk themselves. In Asia, they make soy milk for soups and things like that, and beverages. And so one place to really explore soy, I think, is type it on Google, look up soy foods, Asia. You can type up China, Japan, Korea, Vietnam, and look up a video and learn all the different ways that you can have soy. Soy can be fermented, which is processed, but fermented in a normal, natural way actually concentrates the good stuff, those bioactives. So if you get in Japan, natto, which is a fermented soybean, all right, it's got a strong flavor. Man, does that have a lot of phytonutrients in it. It is like a knockout punch of phytonutrients. But there's also tofu, soft tofu, firm tofu, fermented tofu. These are all different ways to do it. What I would say, learn from a video on the diversity of soy foods that are present in Asia. And then you can go to an Asian market and start asking around to see if they actually have that and try it. Don't be afraid. Think about this, like the Food Network, those TV shows where they actually have food competitions, or they teach you something cool about food. My reaction is always, man, I never had that. Man, I never knew about that. Wow, I think I might want to try that. And maybe I want to learn a little bit more, but then go on and watch a video.
Love that. I know we're nearing the time. We have one more minute. Do you have time for one more question, Dr.
Sure.
Lee? Okay, great. Thank you so much. This is an interesting one. Someone asked, being a former athlete who has had multiple surgeries and experiences physical stress and inflammation, what are some key contributors to aid or hinder recovery?
Great question. So sports injuries, basically every time we work out, if we do a really, really strenuous workout to the point where we're actually growing muscles and building up strength, we are actually ripping and tearing, and our body has to remodel itself. Okay. That's why, that old adage, no pain, no gain. Well, that pain is because you're stressing your muscles. That's triggering the gain, the growth of the muscles. So you got to repair it. Body repairs itself, but how does it do it? It uses the health defense systems. It stimulates angiogenesis to grow more blood vessels. So if you eat foods like apples and apple peels and dried fruits that have the skin on them, like an apricot, you'll stimulate blood vessels. If you have mushrooms with beta-2-glucan or have whole grain or barley, you'll actually stimulate blood vessels, just to healthy blood vessels, to the Goldilocks zone of good blood vessels. You won't get overage. You won't stimulate cancer. That's how the body works, by the way. It can titrate only what it needs. You'll get all those good, healthy blood vessels going to help repair. What about stem cells? Look, cacao, actually, dark chocolate, actually stimulates some of those stem cells. It'll help you help repair your blood vessels, help you grow the muscles as well. Gut microbiome lowers inflammation after a strong workout. You want to recover faster. You want to lower that inflammation. Have fiber-based foods, really good for it. Antioxidants, vitamin C, any antioxidant food will lower the inflammation from the stress you put on your muscle. And of course, immunity is actually a good thing. I don't know, most people don't know this, but when athletes compete, like at the Olympics, or if you're a marathon runner, that kind of workout lowers your immunity. I don't know if most people know this, but like after you win a race, you get your hands on your knees, you're catching your breath, your immune system plummets for a couple of hours, and then it kind of goes back up. So what kind of drink should you have? Or what do you want to do? What kind of snacks should you have after that? Well, eat something that will actually build up your immunity. Broccoli sprouts is a good one. Blueberries is another good one that can actually build up your immunity. Handful of nuts will also do that. It's like trail mix. And so that's a good way to actually recover. Now, I saw a couple of questions that came up asking, because I know people from all around the world. If you want to come to my masterclass and the hour isn't good for you, sign up. So I'll have your information, and there'll be a replay. So we'll send it out to you so you can actually watch it again. I'm going to go much more in depth on the different foods and on the different health defense systems, and also talk about some of the latest research that's come out as well.
So amazing. Thank you so much. Michael and Crystal have been with us this whole time. My mind is blown.
Yeah. How amazing was this? Dr. Lee, thank you so much. This was amazing. This so valuable information. I know, look at these comments. People are going crazy here. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us.
Well, thank you. It's a real pleasure.
All right. Well, feel free to share any last words. Otherwise, we'll let you go and get on with your Saturday, your weekends. We really appreciate your time.
I would just say one last thing, which is you should always love your food to love your health. Follow your body, look at your preferences, lean into your food, find the foods that you just love to eat, because that's the best way to eat your entire life, enjoying it.
Couldn't agree more. Let's enjoy our food. I mean, that's why I'm such a foodie. I just love any type of food. Thank you for being on and sharing, and hope everybody who's listening sign up to the masterclass, go deeper, look and listen to our podcast with Dr. Lee, and listen and look at the TED Talk one more time, and buy his book. It's amazing.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Bye.